I think so. And good evening. Welcome to Natural Resources, Agriculture and Open Space Subcommittee. I am your chair, Delegate Regina T. Boyce, here to go over about 13 bills. Some of them will be either passing and holding because of a fiscal note. Some of them we will be passing, hopefully, and some of them we will be discussing, and some of them need amendments, and the amendments are not here to have them. So you should have the schedule before you, and we're going to go ahead and start with HB 85, spade and neuter program. We have been, I really want to pass this bill. However, we have been talking to Ag, and I think I saw Rachel on the line, really about the money piece. And so on one hand, I hear folks, raise the fee, can provide more services. But what I'm also seeing budgetarily, as I've been talking to the chair about this, is that it seems like there is more than enough money in Ag to administer the program. But also, I think I spoke to the sponsor today and stated that while they had more money, they didn't distribute it all. And I also had to remind them, the sponsor, that just because you apply doesn't mean you get money, because it is a competitive grant. But she made the point that the grants, while those people who applied got them, they got them in smaller amounts. They didn't get a full amount of funding. And I don't know, again, if that's because money is being spared or those grants were less competitive. And so I wanted to give Rachel Jones a moment to chat, because in talking with the chair, he wanted to see if there was a fund balance in Ag. And apparently there was like a $1.3 million fund balance and revenues of $900,000. And I don't know if that is 1.3 plus 900,000 or 900,000 within the 1.33 million. So Delegate Jones, can you speak to that before we call on folks to just talk?
Sure, Madam Chair. Thank you. So to my knowledge, it's not 1.3 plus 900,000. It's the 900,000. It seems that the SNAB tries to reserve so they don't deplete the fund every year, which is why I think last year's numbers showed that there was about 200 grand that they reserved that they did not award from last year's budget, because I think they don't deplete the fund. And as you've already stated, yes, because it's a competitive grant process, some spay and neuter facilities, some clinics will apply, but all of their projects are not completely funded. And so the fund does not deplete every year. They do reserve some funding in it.
And just a follow-up of, is it, I guess, because I don't have that in front of me, is it that versus last year versus the year before, some of these organizations that typically are funded have been getting less every year because either they're doing more services or because we don't have enough money? And that is I guess the crux I'm trying to get at.
Understood. It varies by project. And while I don't personally sit on that SNAB board, what I'm told from people who do sit on the advisory board that review the applications is that it varies. So we would like to see more money in the fund. Obviously, like I said, we'd never want to deplete it every single year. Would we be able to award more grants to more projects if there were additional funding? Yes. However, it's still going to be a competitive process. And since this bill expands the services beyond just spaying and neutering, obviously there are other services that people would apply for, which would also increase the need for additional funding, because now it wouldn't just be spay and neuter, but other, routine services would also be eligible. And so that's going to cause there to be less money in the fund overall just for spay and neuter.
Well, I would clarify that the bill says that they may consider those additional services. It says that they don't have to.
Yes,
So
that's
I do
correct.
want to make that clarification. Delegate Ruth and then Delegate Rasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, and I was not able to be here when we discussed this bill before because I had a bill hearing. So I appreciate the opportunity. And you know, as Rachel said, the funding that's there does not cover the need. And even people who are getting organizations who are getting grants are not always getting what they're asking for. And so I want to make it clear what the consequences are of underfunding these grants. The consequences are that there will be feral cats who are reproducing, and they can reproduce very rapidly, which means more kittens, which means more shelter cats, which means more euthanasias. The other consequence is people who cannot afford spay and neuter will either not get their pets spayed and neutered, which means, again, more shelter surrenders, more cats and dogs, more shelter surrenders, more euthanasias, or they will surrender their beloved pet to the shelter where it may be euthanized also. So there are consequences to not sufficiently funding these programs. And some of the things that were in there additionally, and you're right, Madam Chair, that it says they shall give consideration to, and we wrote that way intentionally to not require it. And some of those were in there at my request because of organizations I had spoken to. But I will say that increasing the funding is more, in my opinion, more important than those other things. They are important, but the most important thing is to make sure there's enough funding. Thank you.
Delegate Rasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think Delegate Ruth covered most of what I was going to say. My understanding is if it's a competitive grant, that's just sort of a prioritization. It doesn't mean that most people won't. It doesn't mean that if there wasn't more money, they wouldn't be funded necessarily. It doesn't, that sounds like there's still a need.
It sounds like everybody's funded. I guess that's the thing too. Maybe
Well,
they're
they're
not
not
funded.
fully, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Delegate Rasa.
My understanding is they're not getting full funding. Like they're not necessarily getting their grants. I thought that's what I understood Ms. Jones to be saying, that they're not fully funding all of those grants. They're holding back some of the money because they don't want to deplete the fund completely. And so people are getting partially funding of their grants.
Yeah, but the question would be for me, and I don't know the answer to this, and I don't want to keep holding up this bill, but the question is when someone says they're funded less this year, I mean, what is the look back like? In other words, this year I got funded maybe $12,000, and last year I was funded 15, and the year before that I was funded, like I don't know the comparison to say I've been less funded. I mean, and so the other concern, as you heard, is that we're increasing this fee again, a fee that, while it is kind of like a nuance across the country, it's I'm not sure it was meant to be, quote unquote, increased every so often. And as I was reminded by counsel, we're not talking about $130 increase. We're talking about a $180 increase. If I got that right, Kristen. Total. Yep.
Of so it's not 180 increase, or
I think, is it okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
So what the chair is referring to is all feed, including pet food, has to pay a $50 registration fee to the Department of Agriculture, and that's what supports the regulatory program, the state chemists, and making sure that the pet food and animal feed is meets certain requirements. And so this other fee, the $100 fee, is paid on each brand of cat and dog food. And so the point that I think was stated was that the total fee that someone is paying on each brand of cat or dog food right now is $150. The $50 initial fee plus the $100 surcharge for the spay neuter program. And so you know, that this would then, if this bill passed, that would be an additional $30. So it'd go off from $150 to $180.
So, Madam Chair, so if I understand correctly, it's not $180 increase, it's a $30 increase the way the bill is drafted.
Correct.
That is correct, but it'd be a total of 180, not necessarily a total of 130, because they still have to pay the $50 initial registration fee to the chemist.
Right.
Isn't that so, Kristen?
As far as the fees go, correct, that they
Yes.
would be, it would go from $150 to $180. The surcharge for on pet food would go from $100 to $130. And then they pay the $50 registration fee.
My system is unstable, so everybody's a little frozen, so I don't know if anybody's talking right now. I'm sorry. Delegate Tarasa?
No, I mean, I guess my feeling on it is just that there's, more need and that it's a small increase that will help really make a difference. So, I mean, that's just my thought on it. Thank you.
Delegate Ruth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we had a spreadsheet, I think that was for a previous year, that showed what was requested and what was actually granted for each organization. So it wasn't that so much that they were granted less than the previous year, it was that they were granted less than they requested, which was presumably based on their actual need. And in some cases, it was significantly less. I can't find that spreadsheet quickly, but my recollection is it was for the previous year, in any case.
I think I have it.
But I also wanted to ask if, if Jennifer Bevan-Dangle could speak on, the question that came up as to whether, the grant amounts are really sufficient, if there really is a need, what that looks like on the ground, because I think she has more of a sense of what that looks like on the ground.
And I have that spreadsheet, if I can share my screen at some point. Leslie, it's in my spade neuter little file on an email. Is Jennifer here?
Yes, Madam Chair, although I apologize, I'm outside of E3, so it is a bit
That's
loud in
okay.
the background.
Go for it.
So to the delegate's question, and what's been asserted here is exactly on point. The first problem that we see is that the grants aren't fully funded per what they're requesting, because if there's a lot of good applicants and not enough funding, they sort of just reduce across the board. And I'm glad, Madam Chairwoman, you have the sort of spreadsheet, because I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. The other problem that we heard, especially this past year, was that groups that historically did request funds did not come in and request. And part of that is because of these incidental expenses we've been speaking about. Part of it is also because they know if they say they're going to do X number of surgeries and they are afraid that they won't get the funding to do X number of surgeries, they'll still be expected to do X with less money, and they can't afford to make up that difference. So the fact that the grants are being cut is having a deterrent effect on applicants coming in and participating in the program, because they can't afford to request and then not get the money they need to do it.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Rachel, Ms. Jones, I should have asked you to see if we could have Jen from your department on here to talk a little bit more about the grants, because again, the chair and I have been talking about this bill a lot, and I want to move it, but there is a money concern, and the concern again is it that, all due respect to ag, is that they're just funding less, or is there a need for more money? And understanding that some of that money also goes towards the office itself to fund the staffer and the educational pieces, and all the other things that they have to do. And so that is the crux that we're getting to, because if we're going to increase the fees, we want to be able to increase the fees. But if we don't need to increase the fees because maybe there is more money and there's something else going. We're just trying to get to the bottom of this. And so
Understood, Madam Chair. So it's twofold. Again, I think the reservation, and I'm sorry that Jen is not on the call as well, but the reservation of the fund is simply so that there is something left in the coffers should the SNAP decide to award some last minute projects or what have you by the end of the year. They just don't ever want there to be zero balance. But I know that they do believe they could do more with more money in the fund. However, you have referenced the portion of the fees that go to the state chemist, that $50 registration, and the spay and neuter fund is obviously separate. And the fund, as far as staffing for MDA, it's just a matter of the staff that help the SNAB make the decisions on who grants and who doesn't. I don't think that there's too much administrative burden built to this fund on the MDA side.
Got it.
It's a matter of
Sure.
how much
Leslie,
they can award and what project.
Right. Leslie, can you scroll up to the top of this spreadsheet? Because there's some people who've been funded the same. SPCA gets funded the same, it looks like, at the very top. The big, like the BARCs, the big organizations look like they're funded at the same amount. And then it gets to the bottom and a couple of people just aren't. So I guess the question is some of these smaller individuals. So like, for instance, Cecil County Animal Services was funded at like maybe $8,000 less. Some people are at 2 or 3, some people are, and so the question is why are some potentially funded the same? Why are some funded less? Like Rude Ranch Animal Rescue, looks like they were funded by almost less. They requested 46,000, they only got 28, and so.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
One thing I notice is that most of the, not all, but many of the ones that were fully funded are the feral grants.
Sure.
And that any of the pet grants are not fully funded, although now that I look at it,
Some of
that's
them
not
are.
the case. So
No, some of the pet are.
and I know that BARCs is having financial difficulties because I've spoken to somebody at BARCs, and I thought they used to apply for both a feral and a pet grant, but I only see the feral here.
Oh, interesting.
Jennifer, do you know, Madam Chair, may I ask Jennifer?
Yes.
I would be hesitant to say exactly what is what. I do believe SPCA is privately owned pets, and then it does seem, I think Wacomico does appear to be feral, so I think it is a little bit of a mix through here. I could cross-reference with the report that is the written report and confirm that, but it does appear to be a bit of a mix.
Do you know about
looking at
BARCs?
this.
Do you know anything about BARCs? Didn't they used to apply for the pet grant also?
I can look them up very quickly and verify that for you.
Thanks.
Okay. I think in the meantime, I don't know if the committee has this, but we're happy to send this to the entire committee, although I think they got a copy a while back. I want to hold this another week until I again chat with the chair and chat with Ag and chat with the sponsor, because we have a lot of fee increases, and all the fee increases that we're going to be probably putting out are going to be worthwhile. I just want to make sure if Ag is saying it has a need, I'd like to know exactly how much more that need is. But with all due respect, it also sounds like even if they got more money, I'd be worried that there are some people that still would not be funded at the request that they asked for. So that's just one point I want to put out there. So
Thank you, Madam Chair.
no problem. HB 228, Patrick.
This is the state parks bill. This is the bill that
Leslie, can you put up the
We're
reprint,
waiting on
please?
an amendment for this. It's just,
Oh, sorry, wrong bill. I thought that, I'm thinking about another bill that had, the amendments, but go ahead. Sorry, Patrick.
yeah, this is a bill that, it spreads out the requirements to spend the money, tweaks the maximums and minimums for certain funds, and then allows from the Great Maryland Outdoors Fund for spending for outdoor environmental education, and then, excuse me, from the Capital Improvements Fund allows for it to be used for projects that are on affecting land managed by DNR, but not necessarily under the Park Service.
Thank you. Dylan, can you follow up about, I know we discussed potential amendments or clarifications, or just clarification about what the bill actually does versus what it doesn't do?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think we are working through amendments with primarily the Maryland Ranger Association and the Friends of Maryland State Parks. Those are not ready for tonight, but they will be ready by next week. And basically what they're going to do is clarify the capital improvement and acquisition fund expenditures, that it has to be related to public access and connected to overcapacity at state parks. And then we're trying to figure out, potential additional oversight on the funds themselves. But that's the part that we're trying to figure out right now.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Patrick or Dylan about HB 228? We should look to get those. Yes, Mr. Baker.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to get some information. If you're taking this $70 million, and I don't understand the lockbox fund, I wasn't here when that was all put in place. So is this money coming out of a box of money that is supposed to be locked?
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I would like to know if we're diverting that $70 million to the projects that you stated in the bill, what projects is this money being taken from?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me take a step back. So the two funds in the bill. So the Great Maryland Outdoors Act passed in the 2022 session, and what that did was it created two funds in that legislation. One being critical maintenance, one being capital improvement and acquisition. And in my former life, I had the opportunity to work on that legislation. What this bill does is it expands that capital improvement and acquisition fund, because right now the language literally in the law says state park project. It removes the word park and adds on any project that on DNR lands. And our intent there is we want to take a holistic look at everything that is in the state park system, which includes our wildlife management areas, our natural resource management areas, and I forget the other designations, but basically because the law literally said state park projects, our AGs have interpreted that to mean only state parks, and there are a lot of other parts in the system there. And I guess to your second question, this was new money in a way for the department. So this is money that we are working to expend to revolutionize the state park system. I don't think this is taking money away from any other ongoing projects at the agency, if that answers your question.
Well, you've answered the question, but I'm not sure I understand.
I'm happy to follow up offline.
Okay.
I'm about to say, you can also ask a clarifying question, because this is what we're doing. We're talking about this, and we are the subcommittee, and it may help somebody else. So if you want to ask a clarifying question,
Okay,
Mr. Baker, do so.
Well, for it to be new money, there had to have been, and had to have been earmarked for something. So by taking this $70 million for something that was earmarked, and I'm not saying the project's good, bad, or anything like that, but I'm just kind of curious as to why they just want to change the way that the money was intended to be spent.
Yeah, I guess the other thing about the Great Maryland Outdoors Act to remember is what that bill actually did was, because of previous actions in former years, program open space, the money from that was taken and used elsewhere. So what the Great Maryland Outdoors Act actually did was repealed the long-term repayments to program open space and instead put that money all in 1 year and put it in these two funds. So it wasn't directly earmarked. There are specific buckets in the fund on what we have to use it on. 30 million for state park for acquisition, I think 5 million for historic preservation, 5 million for water access. So the potential projects that we're looking to do with this money will have to meet those criteria. But as of I think we're still working through what those projects specifically are. So it's not taking from elsewhere, I guess would be what I contend, if that makes any sense.
It's expanding the use on DNR land that's above and kind of beyond just parks. Because you may have a park within, I don't know, historical lands, I guess as he mentioned before, wildlife preservation, so on and so forth. So no taking of money, but potentially expanding its use as it relates to, I would say, the bigger Maryland Great Outdoors Act, if that's correct.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Any other questions, Mr.
Thank you.
Baker? No other questions? Any other questions about this bill or the potential amendments?
Madam Chair, can I clarify something with Dylan?
Yes, sir.
Dylan, this money has already been appropriated, right? It's not in this year's budget.
No, yeah, this is adjusting the money that's already been appropriated.
Right, they have the money, DNR. So we're not talking about this year's budget or anything like that.
Thanks for that clarification. Delegate Baker, does that help you out a little bit?
Yes, it does. It helps out a lot. And again, I just was thinking there were some specific projects that this money was allocated to, and they were pulling it back in to distribute it elsewhere. And it sounds like that's not the case.
Delegate Otto.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm interested. You said 30 million was dedicated to acquisition. Was that part of the original bill that brought forth the 70 million, or was that
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I
So
think
just
they own enough. We need to take care of what we got, but that's my opinion.
Well, that is the problem. We got that too, so we can't just do one part and not the other. DNR owns a lot of land, and so any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will hold this until we get those amendments during the week or next week, and then we'll move on it as the subcommittee sees fit next week. HB 233, I think we have Eric with us from the critical areas. And just to be clear, last time we talked about this bill, not last week, but the week before, I believe we adopted the amendments, but not the bill, because we were waiting on Mr. J. Jacobs to fully read the bill, so he had a full understanding of the bill, and then we can have Mr. Fisher reiterate the three main points of what this bill does and why. Delegate Jacobs.
You want me to say something right now?
Yes, sir. We held the bill for you.
All right. Well, 2 weeks ago, we adopted a large group of amendments, and we had a rewrite at that time with the amendments in. And then last week, we adopted additional amendments, and I asked for a rewrite of the entire bill with all the amendments in there. I did read the bill. I did meet with some of critical area staff, and I brought up one concern, and that's where we are right now.
Can you state what that concern is, please, for the rest of us?
Page 6, line 12. But they have in brackets wherever possible. I like to leave it in, but you know, they have it bracketed up.
Delegate James, you said page 6, line what?
Page 6, line 12, where you see wherever possible, it's in brackets.
Oh, that means where that's removed.
That's exactly right. And I would like to see it stay and not removed.
Because it is necessary. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason that we propose to take wherever possible out, this refers to the establishment of a 100-foot buffer within the 1,000-foot critical area. And when that language was originally adopted by the legislature, they weren't sure how to manage areas of intense development, areas of agriculture. And so they put that wherever possible in the beginning of that legislation. Subsequently, it was determined that we could have a 100-foot buffer in the entire critical area, but how that buffer is managed differs depending on the underlying land use. And so we believe that it is honestly a technical correction to remove the wherever possible to reflect the current practice on the ground.
Delegate Jacobs?
I told you what my concern was after I read the bill, and I made my concerns known to critical areas.
And the explanation Mr. Fisher gave is not sufficient, or you just don't agree?
Well, that's the part of the bill that I do have concerns with, based on my conversations with the ag community, et cetera.
Delegate Otto?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I share my colleagues' concerns, and I would say we remove the brackets and leave that wording in there. It's pretty simple.
Does council have a thought or an opinion on this wording?
Not particularly. It's basically a policy matter. As I understand it, there really aren't any areas where there's not a 100-foot buffer. Maybe the commission can confirm that.
Madam Chair, I can
Yes, go
pitch
ahead,
it
sir.
to our executive director, Kate Charbonneau, to maybe shed a little bit more light on the history of this one.
Yes, please, come on, Kate, let's go.
Yep, I'm here. Thank you. So yes, it is a 100-foot buffer. We have areas that are designated as modified buffer areas. In those areas, the rules are different. You can do more development within that buffer area. Within the agricultural areas, it is also still a 100-foot buffer. However, agricultural uses are permitted. There's no setback with farms that have soil conservation and water quality plans. All farms are required to have those soil conservation and water quality plans. And on timber harvests, we have worked out with DNR requirements for allowances of timber harvest within that 100-foot buffer. So there's always a 100-foot buffer, and the rules just vary as to what can be permitted within those areas. And within the agricultural areas, basically the entire buffer can be used for agricultural purposes.
Thank you, Kate. Delegate Pro Tem Stein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kate, so you're saying right now in place throughout the critical area, there is a 100-foot buffer everywhere.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Is there any circumstance in the future in which that wouldn't be possible?
Good question.
I don't believe so without an amendment to the law. Because the law would specify further in the law, we do have a requirement of it being a minimum of 100 foot. And then the regulations lay out how the rules apply within that 100-foot area. And as I said, with agriculture, all agricultural uses are allowed within the 100-foot area. We have modified buffer areas, which allow a lot more different types of development within that area. So without amending, and I can try and find the section, but another portion of the law, it would still be with 100 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask Delegate Jacobs, was it specifically agricultural uses you were concerned about, or do you have other use cases that would be a problem with this taken out?
Well, my main concern is agricultural use. There was definitely a difference in testimony during the hearing between Eric Fisher's testimony and CBF's testimony, and it's a bit concerning, and that's the reason why I'm asking for the brackets to be removed and leave it there. It must have pretty good it must be pretty significant to really push this issue, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, Delegate Jacobs, it sounds like, to the pro tem's point, if there's a 100-foot buffer everywhere, I guess within the critical areas, saying wherever possible wouldn't make sense, because wherever possible has already been designated per se, I guess is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I understand. It was in the original 1984 draft. I understand all that, but I'm just telling you, you asked me what my concern was, and I've pretty much laid it out. So,
And you said there was a difference between what CBF said and what did they say versus what the contradiction.
The bit of the angst comes from their comments about saltwater intrusion.
Okay.
And that could affect buffers in agriculture.
Okay.
It's not what Eric Fisher said, it was what Doug Myers said.
Well, I think
there's a conflict on the same thing, is what I'm saying. And now we're at this this point in this bill where obviously it must have some meaning, or we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I think it does have meaning in that I think to the pro tem's point, it's the word wherever possible, the possibilities are all exhausted, because there are 100-foot buffers everywhere, I guess, where they've already wanted them designated, as I'm understanding. And I guess, considering the other gentleman is not here to speak for himself, I think the only opinion right now that matters is Mr. Fisher's, unless you think there's a conspiracy of some sort. I'd like to fish it out. But did I make a joke unintentionally?
I think so.
I didn't mean to. That wasn't.
No, help. We deserve it tonight. Go ahead, let it roll.
Well, no, that's not what I'm asking. I mean, we've got time.
Well, tell another joke.
I didn't mean to tell that joke. That's not what I meant. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would simply say, I was in the room when Mr. Myers gave his testimony, and I would consider a significant amount of that testimony speculative and sort of building off of potential items in the future. We have no plans to change the buffer. The sole impetus for removing those two words is to reflect reality. And as Ms. Charbonneau said, it would require another change that you would all make to the law in order to make a change. So it would certainly come back to you.
Mr. Jacobs, does that make you comfortable?
What do you think that answer would be?
I mean, what he's saying is what I'm saying.
Listen, I understand what's being said, but I also understand if it wasn't a big deal, we wouldn't be having this 15-minute discussion over the bracketed two words.
Well, it's a big deal because you made it a big deal. And if it's a big deal to you, then we're all going to make it a big deal because you're a member of the subcommittee. And if you have a concern, we want to talk about it because your concern may be somebody else's concern or something that someone didn't think of. And so that's why we're having this discussion. So, given that Delegate Jacobs has gone through this bill and he seems okay with this bill, with the exception of page 6, line 12, wherever possible being strucken, is there a motion to move the bill as amended? Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess, I don't want to prolong the discussion.
Sure. Go. Oh, my computer froze.
But if it's action, what would be, and Eric or Kate can answer this, what would be the impact of leaving it in? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Ruth was a little bit broken up. I believe the question was, what would be the effect of leaving those 2 words in? Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
I believe it would continue to maintain that we would have a buffer wherever possible. The truth is that it's possible everywhere. So I don't believe that there would be a major detrimental effect, but again, Kate might have a view on this one as well.
Kate, can you provide some insight?
Sure. I mean, I think Chair Fisher is correct. It's, wherever possible is a minimum of 100 feet. It certainly, I think it adds to potential confusion that it could be less, which is our impetus for striking the words in terms of trying to just reflect current realities. But in terms of actual impact, the regulations are very clear, and it wouldn't change how those would be applied.
Thank you.
Delegate Jacobs.
Yes, ma'am.
Thoughts?
I think I beat the horse hard enough.
Well, giving you one opportunity to get one good whip in before we move this bill.
Well, I see you're going to move it, so I've made my comments. I
Well,
read the
I think
bill.
it's fair to say that you don't object to this bill with the exception of this one little.
That you
this
are
one-
correct. You
Yes,
are
okay.
correct.
Okay. I just want to be correct. Delegate Ruth.
So, Madam Chair, if there really is no impact to leaving those 2 words in, if it would make Delegate Jacobs have more comfort level with the rest of the bill, would there be harm in proposing an amendment to leave those 2 words in?
Well, the question is does Delegate Jacobs then support this bill in its entirety and will vote for it not only in subcommittee, but in committee and on the floor if we do that? And if the answer is no, then I would say
If you take those 2 words, if you take the brackets off the 2 words, I'll vote on it tonight in subcommittee and full committee.
will you
And I'll
vote
back-
for it?
And I'll back you up on the floor if you need.
That means you're not voting for it on the floor. Thank
No,
you
I'm
so
voting
much.
for it. I'm voting for it.
Okay.
I said I'd back you up.
Okay. So, Delegate Ruth, are you making a motion?
Yes, I move to amend the bill to remove the brackets around wherever possible.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion, any further discussion on 2 words wherever possible, page 6, line 12? Seeing none, all those in favor of keeping the words wherever possible in the bill, page 6, line 12, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Can I get a motion to move the bill as amended?
Move the bill.
Second, have first and a second. Any further discussion on this bill? All those in favor of HB 233 signify by saying aye.
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 Any objections? So this bill will move favorably. However, it is a hold because of the fiscal note implications. And so we will see this at some point on a vote list. HB 239, we have not been able to discuss this bill, and I want to discuss it, but can we go to Mr. Patrick, can we go to 256 first?
Yep.
So 256
The
is,
files are in order.
that's okay, is Delegate Jones' Waterway Incident Notification Systems Work Group, which given discussions with her and the committee and everyone else, working to make this a study instead of a work group that will require a whole host of individuals that have to be appointed to somewhat of a commission or a committee or to this work group. And so this bill is being amended to be a study done by the Office of Emergency Management within a year's time, and to report back really to just find out whether or not this is something that is feasible for the state. And Patrick, if you've got your files ready, I think we can put up, Leslie, can you put up the reprint of this bill for the committee, please?
And
Yes,
Leslie had
ma'am.
sent out this reprint earlier in the day.
I'm getting her to put it up on.
It basically just turned, like you said, it turns it into a study by MEMA, and it's actually pretty much a 1.5 to 2 year report. We require it to come in on December 1st, 2025. And pretty much just studying the same thing, which I think MEMA had, they said that basically it was the right stuff. And
I'm sorry, Leslie, were you able to pull it up just so that if the folks, does everyone have the reprint?
Yes,
Because-
my apologies.
No, that's
I don't
okay.
think that I sent this one to the whole group, so I'm also sending it to them as well, but I have it up on the screen.
Awesome. And Patrick, can you just walk this through for the committee so everyone's on the same page?
well, you have to go down a little bit, Leslie, on to page 2. You were striking the makeup of the task force and the establishment of the work group, they call it, and keep going down just a little bit more. You see, and now we're requiring the department to study in consultation with other interested stakeholders the same thing that was in the bill.
Yes, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Who are the other interested stakeholders? Is that defined?
No. But the department, MEMA has told us that, they thought we had the right people in the bill. Those are the people they'll go to.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Baltimore County had wanted to be included in the work group and they were not. So I want to make sure somehow that they are in the list of interested stakeholders.
So as I understand it, when I reached out to Maryland's Emergency Management Office, when this was first brought to them, they actually suggested a study, and then it became, I guess, a work group, knowing that they would have to contact the many different jurisdictions, like a Baltimore County, and I know wasn't explicitly stated, because of the cross-jurisdictional needs for different jurisdictions that are on or near water. And so I don't know if we want to, let me look at my copy really quick. If we don't want to make a suggested list for them.
Possibly left them in
Sorry, that's Barry looking for something he left. No, I don't have a print here.
I don't want to complicate the process.
No, I'm sorry. I just need to go to a different, I don't have the reprint physically, but I want to just quickly look at those different groups. Yeah, it was 911 Board, Superintendent of Natural Resources Police, a designee from the Secretary, for MDE, Dorchester County Emergency Management, Anne Arundel, St. Mary's, to your point, I guess, Baltimore County wasn't in it.
Can I read the response?
Yes, sir.
This is who from the department would be involved in the study, or who the department follow up with. And this is from MEMA. We think the work group outlined in the bill is a reasonable representation of the types of entities we would need to consult in the course of a study. In past studies, the department has had success in augmenting legislative mandated work groups with subject matter experts to inform discussions. For this study, it's likely we bring in additional water rescue search experts. That's what Baltimore County was talking about. U.S. Coast Guard, Local 911, and other groups as needed. I mean, they would. I would think they would include Baltimore County and any other county that wanted to participate.
Delegate Ruth, I can certainly make it a point to have them add them. But I know that, this is important to you, so I don't know how to manage this, and I'm wondering why they were potentially left off, and was it because of it just wasn't thought of, or was just an oversight? And I know someone, Delegate Jones put this together. She's from Anne Arundel County, so Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know why either, but I think maybe sometimes people don't think of Baltimore County as being, on the water. And so maybe we were excluded. It's specifically, they asked for somebody from the Baltimore County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management to have a representative. I don't want to complicate the process. I don't necessarily think we need to amend the bill. I guess I would just be comfortable if we could get verbal assurance from
Well, yeah.
Well, and understand that the county representatives that were in the bill are now out of the bill. It's open season. Anyone can participate.
Sure, I understand. But if they are reaching out to people in the bill as interested stakeholders, they might inadvertently exclude Baltimore County. So I'd be comfortable if we just, verbally let them know that we want to make sure Baltimore County, that they touch base with Baltimore County.
Well, I could make the same argument for Baltimore City as well. So
that's a good point, Madam Chair.
And they would also be well aware of the testimony that Baltimore County put in.
Okay, that's fine. I am comfortable moving forward.
And I'm comfortable sending a letter or a message regarding this as it relates to other jurisdictions near or on waterways that should be considered as a part of just someone to reach out to consult with. Are there any other questions, any concerns, questions, pick-throughs? Anybody want to go on page 3, line 5? Delegate Terrassa.
No, I was just going to ask if you're ready for a motion, but I'm happy to wait for other people to go through their concerns.
Thank you. You can hold that motion. Is
Hey,
any other
I'm trying to raise my hand.
Oh gosh, we're gonna have to teach you to use the raise
Okay.
hand function because it's hard to see because even right now.
I understand. Back to, they were hopeful that Baltimore City, Baltimore County would have representation, or possibly someone on that work study. Will Washington, Allegheny County, or Western Maryland be represented?
I would argue anyone who is on water, has some type of on-water system, on-water police, somebody monitoring water, their police, their sheriff, somebody monitoring water would be consulted regarding this study. That is my fair assessment.
Thank you.
Leslie, you can take down the, thank you so much for putting this up. You can take down HB 256. So I can actually see if anyone else has questions. Anyone else have any questions, any concerns? Yes, Mr. Baker. Oh, look at that. You used your hand.
He did it.
So we're moving this bill as a study group.
Yes, sir. Is that acceptable to you, sir?
That's acceptable, but the fees aren't.
There is no fee. Good. Nice try. Ha ha. I'm willing to accept, first of all, the amendments to the bill.
I move the amendments.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Hart. Second, thank
Second.
you so much. Any discussion on the amendments? All in favor of the amendments, signify by saying aye.
I,
Any opposition? The bill as amended.
Move the bill.
Is there a second?
second.
Thank you so much. Bill has been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor of 256, HB 256 as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, no opposition. The bill moves favorably. Thank you so much, Terry Baker. I'm so proud of you.
Now you got to teach him how to lower his hand.
got lowered. So, see, but he did it. Look at that.
Well, that's my
Bravo.
question. Oh, I see it now. I did not know it would say raise and lower.
Look at that.
I
All the
see
things
now.
you learn in a matter of 5 minutes.
And it's
Let's
all
go
because
to-
it's all because of you, my leader.
Leslie, can you pull up HB 239 for us? I know there's some amendments on there, and then Patrick can run through it and we can talk about this because I know Jay Jacobs got some questions, got some things to say about this one.
Okay, well, the amendments on this bill are fairly straightforward. They take out sailboats from vessels that need to get a certificate of boat number. And they change the effective date from June to October.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, Madam Chair. If you could just say the first part, I missed it.
It takes sailboats out of the boats that have to get a certificate of boat number.
Thank you.
Now, would that be any boat? Or
Sailboats.
any sailboat? What if they have auxiliary power?
That are powered just by sail.
So sailboats that do not have any power, any propelling, and no matter the size, correct?
For sailboats, no matter the size, yeah.
Delegate Jacobs.
I'm trying to find this amendment about the sailboats because, pretty much all sailboats have MD numbers on, same number as other boats. They're not typically not documented like, some of the work boats that are Coast Guard documented. Most of these sailboats have, Maryland numbers on them. But if what you're doing is taking out sailboats without power, I'm
correct.
Right?
Correct.
And where does it say sailboats with no power?
It says
page 4 in lines 2 and 19.
With sail.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Propulsion machinery of any type.
The main one is lines 19 and 20.
Okay, we gotta go down a little bit. Who?
Oh yeah, 19 a vessel.
Only by sail. Okay.
Right. And the new language in line 19 is being stricken.
Okay. So it does clarify the fact that it's sail power only because, most sailboats have some sort of propulsion in there, some sort of engine, whether it's an outboard or whether it's an inboard, unless it's one of these small ones that are, like catamarans or these little sailboats.
This amendment should be putting this back to the current law.
So normal sailboats with an engine or an outboard would still fall under the bill with the increased fee.
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Now, thank you.
Are you happy? Is Jay Jacobs happy?
No, I'm not. Listen, I'm going to be like Maggie told me. I'm a no and go on this one.
All right. All right. And so we know that this bill also sets fees, boating fees, because boating fees haven't been increased since I think about 1984. All boats were the same, I guess, fee. And now the bill is boats by, well, now not including sailboats per se, but vessels basically looks like 16 feet and up by size up to 65 feet or more now have a different fee. Delegate Jacobs.
It's incremental.
Yes, it is.
And just for reference, my boat will change from $24 to $100 for registration, just so you know.
24.
Just as
because everybody was 24, correct? Isn't that
everybody was 24, and now it starts, the minimum I think is 75. And then it's incremental from that point on. But just as a point of reference, I'm just saying my boat went from 24 to 100.
But that's for how much time?
2 years.
There you go. So essentially.
And the 24 was for 2 years.
Right. So you're essentially $50 a year.
You better hit it again. All right.
Any other questions about the bill? DNR, do you want to add anything here?
No, the only thing I would add is just that DNR is built on the user pay, user benefit model, and this is no different. Part of the reason why the Marine Trades Association of Maryland is in support of this legislation is because of the fact that all of the money received here goes into the State Boat Act Fund, which funds the State Boat Act, the entirety of it, including different things such as our most notable program, like the Waterway Improvement Fund, which does a variety of work across the state. And as you said, Madam Chair, these haven't seen an increase in at least 25 years. And because of that, through the Waterway Improvement Fund, we've only been able to fund historically over the past 5 fiscal years, roughly 64% of projects. So, with this revenue, we can't use it kind of however we want. We have to use it to support the boating community. And I think that's been, part of the reason why the Marine Trades Association of Maryland supported it. So thank you.
No problem. Any other questions about this bill? Any suggestions? Any sparring on the fees? I like a good spar. No. Any concerns other than that the fee's going up by $25 for Jay Jacobs every year? Mr. Jacobs, yes.
What I would like to say is that
Yes, sir.
Where the money is going is a worthwhile spot. And while mayor of Rock Hall, I was a recipient of waterway improvement funds for the dredging of the entrance of the harbor, which should have been done by the federal government, by the Corps of Engineers, and they just neglected to do their part. So when Ehrlich and Steele were in office, that was the first time that I received waterway improvement money. And that I understand where it's going and it does a good thing. It's just that if I voted for it, I probably couldn't go home.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm so glad that you're putting your money to a good cause. God bless you so much. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with my colleague. The Waterway Fund is very relevant and is important to the state of Maryland and all, but these radical fee increases. But do you need a motion to move those amendments on the sale?
Yes, sir, I do.
I'll move the amendments, but that doesn't mean I'm going to support the bill.
You know what? We thank you so much for your service to the subcommittee. Is there a second?
I'll second the amendments.
Thank you so much. Any other dialogue, discussion on the amendments? All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you so much. The bill as amended.
Move the bill. as amended.
Second.
Second, thank you for the first and second. Any closing arguments, discussion on the bill as amended?
Get Joe to take you down there at 9 o'clock.
Oh, Jackie, you're on, you're not, okay. Any other discussions? No. All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Oppose?
No.
No. I'm gonna put, I got it. No equals Baker, Jacobs, and Otto. Thank you so much. The bill moves favorably. Thank you so much. Let's go to, oh, that scopes here. Let's go to 345. Patrick.
Okay, one second. This is Delegate Polakovich Carr's bill that redefines wildlife and fish with respect to the Endangered Species Act, Threatened and Endangered Species Act. Requires DNR to review and update the regulations, the Endangered and Threatened Species regulations every 5 years, and outlines information that must be submitted to the petition for additional removal of a species from the lists. The amendment, there was an offered amendment by the sponsor to, and maybe Dylan can clarify this, but as I've been told, to change the definition of wildlife to more accurately match how the department has been using it.
Dylan?
Yeah, we're good with the amendment, and the bill itself just codifies a lot of existing practice, so we're fully in support.
And if I remember correctly, I just want to quickly look at this. And 345. I can't remember. Yes, there's no fiscal note on this. Okay, I was just triple checking. And so Dylan, you said that the bill essentially just codifies current practice in DNR?
Yep, yes, ma'am.
Any questions, any thoughts, any concerns about HB 345?
You say it has amendments?
Yes, so the sponsor amendment was to define what was it again? Define
It just alters the definition of wildlife.
Wildlife, sorry.
To more accurately reflect how DNR's program works. Basically, just defines it as a non-domesticated species or subspecies of the animal kingdom.
All right, I'll move the amendment.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Delegate Allen. All in favor, any discussion about the amendment? It's just one. Okay, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Thank you so much. The bill is amended.
Move the bill.
Second.
Second, thank you so much. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion about the bill as amended that essentially codifies DNR's practices and changes the wildlife definition to the definition DNR uses in-house? Okay. All in favor of HB 345 as amended, say aye.
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 Any objections? Thank you so much. The bill has been moved favorably by the committee. 420. This is the one I'm excited about. Kristen.
Yes, so the sponsor submitted amendments to establish a pilot program that would assist with the cost of purchasing and installing communication boards at state and local parks. The funding for this pilot program would be coming from the Park System Capital Improvements and Acquisition Fund. Currently, any money that goes to the department in excess of $70 million for the fund, up to $10 million can be used in part to fund for funding to make state parks accessible to people with disabilities. And so what this does, this will establish a pilot program specific to installing the communication boards at state and local parks. And it establishes a process where local governments can apply to the program for a grant to install a communication board. There's also an amendment that updates the definition of communication board based on some testimony that was received. And I think that covers it. There's also a reporting requirement for Department of Natural Resources to report back on an evaluation of the pilot program.
Thank you, Kristen, so much. Any questions about this? So essentially, as it was before, if I remember correctly, and reading this bill, it essentially required use of open program space money, both, I think, the regular pot and the local pot. And so this changes that so that it really falls more in line with some of the work already being done through the Maryland Great Outdoors Act. Mr. Delegate Otto.
Well, thank you for calling me Mr., but thank you, Madam Chair. It looks like we're dipping in that same pot again for something. Is there a carve out? Is there an amount listed in this?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I spoke past that. It's up to $100,000 of a specific pot of money could go towards this pilot program, up to.
Well, $100,000 is reasonable in my respect, but
Oh, well, thank you.
for that and that perspective and for what it's going to. So
Can I let Dylan discuss where that money is coming from so folks know where is it coming from and it's not eating from anything else? Mr. Baylor, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Otto, you make a good point, but as Kristen said, the Great Maryland Outdoors Act, the Capital Improvement and Acquisition Fund, for the first $70 million, it had to be spent in various buckets. And then what the law said was that if that fund received an additional $10 million, then it can be used for a few purposes, including increasing accessibility at our state parks. So what this amendment does is it kind of just takes 100,000 of that extra 10 million and says, okay, DNR, make a pilot program with 100,000, so that way we can increase accessibility with some of that money. So I guess I would say it meets the intent of the original money as well.
One, and two, it is only money that is from additional funds. So just to be clear, Dylan, if that fund didn't make additional funds, then something like this would not be funded.
Yes, ma'am.
Delegate Otto, does that work for you? Okay. Any other questions? Anyone else kind of look through the bill? And I think the thing about this bill is essentially, rather than creating something new, using resources that already exist, and not only with money, but also with program, again, the Maryland Great Outdoors Act. Someone just had their hand up. Delegate Baker, did you have your hand up? You should have left it up.
I did, but I took it down. I was going to ask the question. I have a note here that says Mako was unfavorable.
Yes, they were, but as this bill is changed, they should be favorable because they had concerns about this bill taking money from or suggesting taking money from those two pots of open space money.
Okay, thank you.
Can I move the amendments?
Yes, you can. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Delegate Terrassa? Oh.
I was just going to second. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Bill as amended?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Jay, was that no?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw your hand. Okay. So the bill moves favorably from the subcommittee. Thank you guys so much. Moving right along. Oh, boy. HB 512. I know, we had this last week, and as I remember, Delegate Jacobs and DNR were supposed to be working on an amendment. Delegate Jacobs, what you got for us?
There has been an amendment submitted by DNR.
Okay,
And I drafted that amendment earlier today, and it's been sent out to the committee, to the subcommittee.
okay, so is it the same amendment that's in the reprint?
It should be, the reprint should be in front of you.
Yep.
Leslie, do you have the reprint for House Bill 512?
Yes, I believe it's in the calendar too. Madam Chair, would you like for me to pull it up?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Leslie. Y'all give it up for Leslie. She is here late with me,
Mm-hmm.
bossing me around, making
Well,
sure you guys are
you're gonna
taken
give her
care
a
of.
half day off tomorrow, right?
Pretty much, pretty much. So if we scroll
Yeah, I think you want to scroll down.
to page 2. There we go.
The amendments after the language in the first reader.
Here we go. Is that line 17 extended?
Go down to below line 17. There you go. The underlying language. This is adding the reporting language to the non-title fishing license, the angler's license, and the title recreational fishing license.
So this is both for commercial and recreational.
Yes.
Is there any question about this amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, Otto.
Patrick, you mentioned the non-title.
Yes.
You're talking about largemouth bass in the pond, or
Yeah, trout.
they'd have to. Well, most of that's turned back in anyway, but
Well, they would only have to report if the department required it.
okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you.
Dylan, go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I was just going to say that what this amendment does is it copies the same language for the bill is introduced for commercial reporting, and it replicates it for recreational. So the department has the same authority across the board to develop regulations related to reporting.
And Dylan and Delegate Jacobs, does this also satisfy, you know, during the hearing, we heard folks talking about extra reporting or mandatory reporting online. I want to clarify and talk through that.
Well, this amendment doesn't make that happen. This is a step towards making that happen, but it is not requiring. There's nothing in this amendment that has any specific information on how to report or when to report
Good.
or anything of that nature. It's probably a little bit clearer language than what already existed.
Thank
But
you,
it really doesn't define an action. It just says they can establish regulation.
And you're okay with this?
Well, it's not what I was asking for, but it's a step in the right direction.
Well, what were you asking for, Delegate Jacobs?
I was looking for, really the action of creating the process of reporting. You know, I've been here 14 years and I've passed the bill 3 times and you know, about recreational reporting, about establishing the program. So 3 times there's been a legislation passed to establish a program, and we're no closer today than we were 14 years ago. You know what I mean? We're still not reporting. And yet 97% of the fishery, you know, we're making cuts in commercial fishery. We cut the commercial, I mean, the charter boats 50%. And you got the biggest segment of the fishery virtually does no reporting. And I don't know how we can continue to make these decisions without the proper science. We're making these decisions with the biggest piece of information missing.
Well, thank you,
And I hear it all the time. I mean, you know, the whole point is if we're going to do good science, then we need to do complete good science. That's what we need to do. You know, you can't leave the biggest user group out and make these cuts to every other fishery. You know,
That's fair. I mean, that is fair. And I think
that was my comments in their entirety, that, you know, we've been talking about this for years, and, you know, this is a tiny step in the right direction, but it still doesn't give direction.
Dylan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Delegate, I appreciate you meeting about this and talking about this. I think with these amendments, it puts it all on an even playing field with regard to the recreational and commercial. And I think, as you heard in the bill hearing from our Assistant Secretary and previously on last week's meeting, the department's intent here would be to look fishery by fishery and go through the public scoping process to develop these regulations on what reporting would be required. And, you know, the one other point I would say is, I know you passed the bill 3 times. I would say it's a new DNR. I'm 60 days into my first session, so happy to work with you on it, you know, moving forward as well. But I think this amendment puts everybody on the even playing field and gives DNR the tools to be able to look to this holistically and develop a different criteria for different users.
Well, let me first say that, Dylan, you've done a great job of working with me to accomplish some of these things. And you know, as far as your efforts, I can't say anything bad at all. I mean, I think you've worked really hard at it and tried to accommodate the issues. You know, I was looking for a little more definitivity in this, but, you know, we're going to have to talk about it some more. That's all. But you know where I'm coming from. But I appreciate all your help.
Delegate Baker. Delegate Baker, you're on mute, dear.
So this bill is going to require both commercial and recreational fishermen to keep a log and report, or just commercial?
Commercial and recreational. I think Delegate Jacobs thought that it would be more prohibitive if we're talking about that we need more information and we're not getting enough, that everybody with a license should have to report.
Well, I'm not in favor of recreational fishermen keeping a log and a record of every fish they catch and every trout they catch. That's going to be painstaking for the recreational fisher person.
That's fair, Dylan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say what this bill does not require that as written. If this bill were to pass as written, what it would give the department the tools to be able to have that conversation across the various facets of commercial and recreational on, if it passed as amended, on reporting. And I think the department's intent is to work through that through our sport SFAC, Sport Fish Advisory Commission, Tidal Fish Advisory Commission, and with the industry to develop that, what reporting might look like moving forward now that we would have this authority.
Delegate Baker.
So does that mean they would work through it and then they could come up with rules and regulations as to how I would have to report trout, or would that have to go through another process for approval?
It ultimately would have to be regulations, but this bill would empower the department to make those regulations.
Oh, then I'm not for that.
Okay.
And just to be clear, there's no guarantee that they would require reporting for trout. They would have the authority to, but they might not need that.
Right.
Well, just so you know, my intent was mainly in striped bass and, you know, the bay fish. That's regulated through the Chesapeake Bay. So whatever they establish, they would establish. But I think that the main issue is striped bass, and it could be perch, it could be spot, it could be other things added. But that's all I can say about that.
Thank you. Delegate Baker, you still have another question? No. Good job. Do you have another question, Delegate Baker? No? Okay. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I had some concerns of putting this into that with the non-title fishery reporting and that license. I'd like to digest this a little more and see if we can't come up with something else, or maybe the department can, of where to put this reporting, and maybe we can see what form it's going to take and how. I don't want to make it complicated, because I got people going out every day on their boats that have retired and fishing for rockfish. So, but I think it ought to be accounted for somewhere along the line.
Fair enough, sir. Dylan.
Yeah. I would just say what this bill as amended does is, with the commercial and with those two other licenses that Patrick mentioned earlier, it just establishes the ability for the department through regulation, which includes a public scoping process, to require reporting on that. I think all of these decisions will be made with the industry and through our public scoping process. But what this bill does is just set that framework in which we can operate to develop reporting on these various things. So with that, I'll stop talking.
Thank you so much. And I do want to hold this bill another week, but I would like to move the amendments in the bill at least the amendments at this point.
I'll move the amendment.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second.
Thank you so much. Any discussion on the amendments? We've discussed them enough. All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. I don't foresee any more amendments coming, so I'd like to move the bill as amended, but still hold it.
Okay.
Are you okay with moving this bill, Mr. Jacobs? Because
I would prefer to hold it a little bit longer.
all right, I'll hold it. We've just moved the amendments. Let's go to 715. 715 is Delegate Griffith's fishing and hunting licenses and trout stamps, complimentary licenses and stamp exemptions, veterans determined to be unemployable.
Yes, that pretty much says it all. He has a complimentary bill for motor vehicle registrations, but this is going first. Yeah, that's where we're at.
But there were amendments to this bill.
Lifetime complimentary angler's license for veterans, and there's not that many of them. That's what the department supports it. Who's determined under U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to be unemployable.
No amendments on the bill?
There is a technical amendment correcting a cross-reference.
Oh, okay.
And that's on page. Is that page?
On the reprint, that's on page 2 and 4.
2 and 4. The one that says paragraph 2 of this subsection.
Correct.
And can you explain why that amendment was there?
Well, so that's correcting the cross-reference.
Oh, I'm sorry. Leslie, we're on 715.
And it looks like on page 5.
Oh, my
also.
apologies.
Madam Chair, it looks like page 5 also has the same correction.
Right, it's 2, it's 5, and it's 4. 2, 5, and 4. Paragraph 2 of the subtitle. Okay. So just being the former prisoner of war American veteran who the U.S. Department of Affairs is unemployable.
Oh, Delegate Ruth's referring to the hunting license. She's correct.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Delegate Ruth is pointing to page 5, which is the hunting license. She's correct. And basically what this is just saying is saying department has authority to, it's given them authority to issue to Maryland residents. And then it also gives to out-of-state people as long as there's reciprocity from their home state. And this cross-reference incorrectly does not point to the Maryland resident getting reciprocity, just corrects that. And the Senate bill has this same amendment on it for the record.
Madam Chair, I'll move the amendments.
Wait a minute. I have a question. Patrick, you just said, and I didn't read this. Oh, I'm sorry. So on page 2, line 19, Roman number 2, whose state of residence extends similar privileges to the individual specified. So that's where we're talking about non-residents.
Well, it should be referencing residents, but it doesn't in the draft. The amendments fix that.
So I'm looking at the amended copy.
That's correct.
So line 19, 2 on page 2 says the department may issue a lifetime complimentary angler's license to an out-of-state person who state of residence extends similar privileges to the individual specified in paragraph 2 of this subsection.
Right. And those are state residents, Maryland state residents.
I guess I don't understand that.
Paragraph 2 is above it. That's the provision for Maryland state residents. Department may issue a
Which
lifetime
if I
complimentary-
am out of state, I would have to meet those requirements in order to get a license in Maryland if I'm out of state.
Right, because they have the same requirements, but then also your state has to give reciprocity. And that's what Roman 2 is saying, lines 19 to 21.
Okay. Delegate Otto, sorry.
Madam Chairman, I moved the amendments. I think it
That's fine.
and it's a good bill.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The bill is amended.
Move the bill.
Second.
Second.
Thanks so much. All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposition? The bill moves favorably. HB 807. It's Patrick.
Yeah, this is Delegate Stein's bill that allows the department, well, first of all, requires them to study and report on using alternative methods of SAV delineation other than the current VIMS aerial survey. And it also authorizes them to use other methods to do the surveys. And there are amendments here suggested by the department. They, again, were sent out to you all today. Um,
If
Here,
we
go
can
do
pull that one up, please, Leslie.
and I do have some questions, but I can save them for Dylan tomorrow. Or maybe Dylan's here, maybe we'll ask
Yes,
him
he's
here.
still here.
We talk about many of the amendments are simply technical wordsmithing, but then in describing the other surveys that may be used, they say any other survey that encompasses the distribution of SAVs in a bay, coastal bays, or both bays, and then uses a methodology for SAV surveys that are approved by the Chesapeake Bay Program, EPA program. And then it takes out any references to delineating or updating delineations of SAVs based on observation.
That's right.
And then we change the effective date. The reporting date. You asked for it in September, but that doesn't really make any sense. You usually do it the next December. Give the people as much time to work on it, but have it done in time for the holidays. So it's on or before December 1st, 2025 for the final report.
And is the sponsor available to say how he feels about these amendments? Are you good with these amendments?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm good with these amendments.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Why is it being changed from 2024 to 2025 for the reporting date?
Go ahead, Pro Tem Stein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe just to provide the department, we're giving them another year. I think it was requested that to be able to prepare a report, given everything else they're responsible for, they wanted that extension. And if I could ask Dylan to confirm that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this bill? Any concerns?
Can I ask Dylan a question?
Yes, sir.
I was just wondering about in page 2, line 9, you have new language to saying another survey, any other survey that encompasses the distribution of submerged SAV. Is encompasses really the right word here? Addresses, maybe?
I am not a lawyer, so if there is a better word to use, I would happily defer to you, Patrick. But I think encompasses was more directly tied to the specific waterways referenced in A, B, and C. After that, I don't have the specific reprint in front of me.
So is it to say that you can use surveys in these other?
Well, these are the areas that they're surveying now, I guess.
Yeah, I think the delineation here was the intent behind our delineation. And Patrick, I don't know if encompasses is the correct word, but we wanted to make it clear that a potential SAV survey could be on just the bay, the Atlantic coastal bays, or both. So we wouldn't want to preclude a potential SAV survey that is just in the coastal bays, but doesn't include the main bay. So that was our intent.
Well, the tabulation's fine. I don't have any issue there. It's just that one word. I don't know. Maybe we can discuss it after crossover. My other point was going to be on the report. Usually we send these reports to the governor and the General Assembly. It's in the bill, just going to the General Assembly. Again, we can talk about this after crossover if you want.
Is it the Senate bill hasn't had a hearing yet,
Senate bill is in rules.
Oh, oh, sorry. Okay,
Forget that after crossover comment.
yeah. Okay. There any other questions about the bill and the changes in the bill? Is there?
The only
Yes,
thing
sir.
the only thing I wanted to say that, you know, the Waterman Association and Talbot Watermans and all of them, they supported this bill when it originally came in. And there's been a lot of changes here, and I'd really like for them to be able to put the seal of approval on them, because I know that this SAV issue is a big issue, especially in the mid Bay area. And you know, I just want to make sure
Well, it was
they're
all
good with it.
favorable.
It was all favorable, but that there's been a lot of amendments. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think some of these amendments also came up, if I remember, in.
There were supposed to be DNR amendments in the hearing.
That is
I've
true.
got those notes written in my
I do too.
book here. And you know, I just want to verify with those guys that they're good with it.
Right, so per my
mean,
notes, the
do
favorable
it.
amendments from my committee notes match here, essentially adding clarifying language requiring all alternative use standard methodology and
Yeah.
removing or observe so that there is still mapping and not observing. And then
Yeah.
they said they needed a 6-month delay in the beginning. So
Yeah.
those amendments match exactly what's in this bill. And so those individuals were at that hearing. I mean, I'm happy to hold it. I'm just making that point.
Listen,
Dylan,
you know, I think it's probably good, Regina, but I mean, Madam
I'm
Chair,
happy
but
to hold it. I'm not anxious to move it. I'm happy to
all
hold
right,
it.
thank you.
Dylan,
I was just going to say, we did include the amendments in our testimony that was provided to the committee on the day of.
Yep. Happy to hold, and then we can revisit next week. Delegate Jacobs, it's your job to get the feedback and so that we can approve the
Listen,
amendments.
I think it's probably fine, but
I'm happy to hold it. It's
but I
okay.
just, you know, it's a big deal. I just want to make sure.
Okay. Let's go to 857, please. Almost there, guys.
All right. This is the harvest hours on aquaculture, changing it from prohibiting the harvest between sunset and sunrise to having DNR establish the hours. And it seems the main concern is during the summertime, when they feel the need that they really should shut it down to like 4 hours a day at most. And then, of course, they're required to establish the hours in consultation with the Aquaculture Coordinating Council, of which the sponsor is a new member.
There's no amendments, right?
There are no amendments.
I moved the bill.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor of the bill? Unamended, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Bill moves favorably. Last bill, HB 1042.
Madam Chair, I'll be dropping off now.
Yes.
I'm sorry, did you want me to go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. I'm
I
sorry.
apologize.
I'm sorry, Kristen.
So this bill is establishing the Maryland Agricultural BMP Best in Show program. I know the agencies are working on amendments with the sponsor, but I can go ahead and go over how the bill is, how how it was introduced. So the purpose is to provide increased funding for coordinated and targeted.
Kristen, I'm sorry, do you want the bill up or are you fine without the bill up?
Are you asking for who?
You. I'm asking if you want the bill up.
Oh, it's up to you if the members want to see it. I have a paper copy. But yeah, if you're or people can bring it up on their
Yep.
their floor system.
just trying to get everybody to look at the same thing at the same time. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's not a
Sorry.
reprint, there's no amendment, so you can just go ahead and pull up House Bill 1042.
Okay.
So the stated purpose is to provide increased funding for coordinated and targeted restoration practices across one or multiple agricultural operations, to prioritize the use of state funds to support best management practices in locations most likely to have a short-term benefit to water quality, living resources, and public health, and to increase the cost effectiveness and environmental, social, and health impacts of state-funded best management practices. Under the bill, there would be a competitive grant program. Funding would come from existing funds and programs. There's an account that's being set up in the bill that would receive up to $2 million per year of the revenues that come to the Department of Agriculture for cover crops. Up to $3 million could come from the 2010 trust fund. And then if there were any funds transferred to the department from the Clean Water Commerce account. So right now, basically, it's targeting about $5 million from these existing programs or funds to support grants for preferred best management practices that would be targeted into specific locations. And I mean, I can go into some more details. I mean, it's like the bill also sets forth requirements that would be the person applying for the grant would have to include a plan for the implementation of not less than 5 different types of BMPs, with priority consideration given to specified BMPs designed to function as part of a common plan to maximize impact and efficiency, or for an operation located in an overburdened community or underserved community. It'd be certain BMPs that would be designed to reduce exposure to air emissions from regulated point sources of pollution. And the Department of the Environment would publish on its website a certain payment schedule. Basically, these would be for like incentive payments that would be paid on top of the payments to reimburse for the cost share BMPs. But I think that pretty much covers it, you know, in a broad sense.
Thank you, Kristen. Any questions about this? I know there are a lot of amendments potentially coming for this, but I just wanted to start off and start discussing this particular bill. And I know that the Department of Agriculture had some thoughts and opinions about some amendments, as well as some other organizations. Delegate Jacobs.
I think one of the concerns was in a possible amendment by one of the, I can't remember exactly which one that was talking about it, but where the $2 million was coming out of Bay Restoration. I think there was an effort to take it from a different pot and not BRF. So I would hope that these amendments are addressing where this money's coming from, other than where it is right now in the bill.
Thank you, Delegate Otto.
Much the same as my colleague, Mr. Jacobs. The $2 million, it looks like is coming from the Bay Restoration Fund now to cover crop program, and that is still an essential part of our initiatives to meet the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. So I'd hate to see things deteriorate from there and be redirected to something else.
Thank you so much, Delegate. Well, she is former delegate, but Rachel, do you want to speak on any of the? I'm looking at your letter again regarding this bill.
Sure, thank you. So obviously the department understands that, you know, based on the Caesar report, the Chesapeake Bay water quality improvement is going to be heavily dependent in the future on targeted best management practices. And so given that, you know, we are grateful to the sponsors for working with us and listening to our concerns about the the original bill. And so those amendments did give the opportunity for MDE and DNR and MDA to all collaborate and say, we all understand the importance of the intent of the bill. And with that being said, DNR was willing to divert funding from the Chesapeake and Coastal, I believe it's waterways, and obviously some of our current cost share program funding for some of the cover crop programs from the Bay Restoration Fund will be utilized, but the bill will also, as amended, will also allow for up to $3 million from the Clean Water Commerce account to be used. And so the amended version of the bill also states that someone would be eligible, a farmer would be eligible for this fund if they showed that they were using multiple BMPs. So for some of our cover crop programs currently, you might just, use one best management practice, and then MDA would fund up to 100% of the cost share for that. This is going to incentivize farmers to utilize, multiple best management practices and multiple cover crop programs and other options, stream restorations and different things on their farms in order to help meet those Bay goals and to, ensure that we've got healthier soils and all of that. And so, yes, with any time that there is a reallocation of funding, it means that existing programs will change a little bit, but what we believe will happen with this is that it will allow us to further enhance and maximize some of our existing programs. We understand the intent of what the sponsors are trying to do, and we appreciate, again, them working with us and hearing our agency concerns about the ease of implementation. As the bill was originally drafted, it would have presented some challenges, and so they have accepted numerous amendments from the agencies, and so we do appreciate their coordinated participation with us on that.
Any other thoughts, discussions about this? Clearly, this is a hold as we wait for those amendments and see how this plays out, especially given so many funding sources were just mentioned, and that there's some concern about where that funding is coming from. Any thoughts? Any concerns? Thank you so much, Kristen. Clearly, this is a hold. And so we are essentially done. Good job, guys. It's only almost 2 hours. We voted out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bills. Got a couple of holds as we're waiting for amendments, and hopefully we can vote out some more next week. Good job. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.